House of the Dragon Season 3 had great moments, but no clear direction. House of the Dragon Season 3 gave us a resurrected king, a queen slowly losing herself, a father betraying his wife to protect his daughter, and a battle that destroyed almost everyone who touched it. Those are powerful pieces. The problem is that they do not always feel like pieces of the same story. Individually, many of Season 3's scenes are among the strongest the series has ever produced. The performances are excellent, the dragons feel dangerous again, and several characters finally received the complexity they were missing. But as a complete season, the story constantly struggles to decide where its center should be. Is this Rhaenyra's descent into tyranny? Aegon's unlikely return? Daemon's transformation as a father? The tragedy of the dragon seeds? Or the rise of Daeron and Ormund Hightower? Season 3 tries to make all of these storylines equally important, and because of that, none of them completely takes control. So let's break down why House of the Dragon Season 3 was filled with great moments, and still struggled to find a clear direction. If you enjoy finding the hidden meaning behind every scene, kindly subscribe. Now, let's get into it. A season about losing control. There is a clear idea underneath Season 3. Power is much easier to acquire than it is to control. Rhaenyra takes King's Landing, but she cannot make the city love her. Aemond has the largest dragon in Westeros, but he cannot master his own fear and guilt. The dragon seeds receive the power of the Targaryens, but nobody teaches them how to carry it. Ormund attempts to shape Daeron into a weapon, only to discover that frightened young men and living dragons cannot be moved like pieces on a board. Even Daemon, the character who has spent his entire life believing strength means control, is forced to accept that neither his daughters nor his dragon exists simply to obey him. The season knows what it wants to say. It does not always know whose story should be saying it. Every few episodes, the narrative appears to choose a new center. The Battle of the Gullet makes the season feel like Rhaenyra's tragedy. The fall of King's Landing turns it into a political drama. Harrenhal becomes a supernatural story about Aemond. Then Tumbleton introduces Ormund and Daeron as though they are the most important players in Westeros. All of these stories contain good material. The connective tissue between them is where the season becomes unstable. Cassius Rhaenyra wins the throne and loses herself. Rhaenyra should be the emotional center of Season 3. She begins the season by losing Jacaerys during the Battle of the Gullet. Almost immediately afterwards, she captures King's Landing and finally sits upon the Iron Throne. This is the victory she has been fighting toward since Viserys died. But the show understands that taking the throne is not the same as becoming queen. The city is starving. The treasury is empty. The faith refuses to anoint her. The small folk do not see a savior entering the capital. They see another dragon lord demanding obedience. Rhaenyra attempts reform, justice, and redistribution, but every decision creates a new enemy. When persuasion fails, she increasingly turns to fear. Public punishment becomes political theater. Dissent is treated as treason. Her belief in prophecy slowly transforms from a private responsibility into proof that she is divinely entitled to rule. This is compelling because Rhaenyra does not suddenly become cruel. She becomes certain. Every death convinces her that hesitation is weakness. Every betrayal teaches her that mercy is dangerous. Every challenge to her legitimacy strengthens her belief that only she understands what Westeros needs. By the finale, the High Septon's refusal to crown her is no longer something she can tolerate. She has him executed, and then stands before people who no longer trust her, declaring herself the prince that was promised. The tragedy is not simply that Rhaenyra becomes more violent. It is that she begins using destiny to excuse the violence. But the season sometimes moves too quickly between the stages of this transformation. One episode presents a ruler trying desperately to separate herself from Daemon's cruelty. Another presents someone prepared to remove Mysaria, dismiss the warnings of Baela, and murder a religious leader in public. The destination makes sense. The emotional bridges leading to it are not always given enough time. Jace's death, the hostility of the city, the return of Aegon, Daemon's deception, and the faith's rejection should gradually crush Rhaenyra's confidence. Instead, these pressures are frequently divided across separate plots. As a result, her descent occasionally feels like the season checking off another step toward the Rhaenyra history remembers. Emma Darcy makes the transformation believable through performance. You can see the grief being replaced by conviction, and the conviction hardening into fanaticism. But the writing does not always give that performance enough room to breathe. Rhaenyra's arc is one of the season's strongest ideas. It should have been the spine holding everything else together. Aegon becomes interesting after losing everything. Strangely, the most consistent character in Season 3 may be Aegon. He has lost his throne, his body has been permanently damaged, and the brother who was supposed to protect him tried to kill him. Aegon begins the season stripped of almost everything that once made him king, and that is exactly what makes him compelling. For most of the series, Aegon has been defined by appetite, resentment, and the expectations of other people. He never truly wanted the crown until he experienced what it felt like to be loved by the crowd. Once the crown is taken away, he finally has to decide what remains. His journey with Alys works because neither man can hide behind appearances anymore. They are physically broken, politically isolated, and forced to survive without armies surrounding them. Alys still manipulates him, but their relationship contains a strange honesty. Both understand what it means to be underestimated. Both know that pity in Westeros can become another form of humiliation. Aegon's reunion with Sunfire is the perfect conclusion to that story. Sunfire is not simply a weapon returning to its rider. The dragon is the last creature connected to Aegon that has suffered exactly as he has. Both were burned, both were abandoned, both were assumed to be finished. When Sunfire emerges and destroys the mutant soldiers, Aegon does not suddenly become morally good. He becomes dangerous again. That distinction matters. The moment works because it does not erase everything Aegon has done. It simply restores his agency. He stops running, identifies himself as king, and chooses to return to the war. His confrontation with Aemond in the finale completes the reversal. Earlier, Aemond stood above him with Vhagar and decided whether he would live or die. Now Aemond is the one on his knees. Aegon has every reason to kill him. Instead, he orders him to rise. It is not forgiveness. Aegon still needs his brother in Vhagar, but it demonstrates a political understanding he did not possess before. He controls his anger long enough to use the person he hates. Aegon's storyline is simple, focused, and emotionally satisfying. The problem is that it often feels disconnected from the seasons surrounding it. He disappears for long stretches, while Rhaenyra, Daemon, Aemond, and the Hightowers occupy different versions of the war. When he finally returns, it feels less like one story reaching its next chapter, and more like another story suddenly re-entering the room. Daemon finally becomes a father. Daemon's Season 3 storyline is more effective when it stops asking whether he wants the throne and begins asking whether he can protect his own family. His conflict with Rhaenyra exposes a side of him that conquest never could. Rhaenyra spends much of her life believing she is the useless Targaryen daughter, the one without a dragon. Claiming sheep-stealer should therefore be a triumph. Instead, it becomes another source of guilt and rejection. She enters the battle of the gullet before she fully understands the dragon she has claimed. Sheep-stealer does not behave like a trained royal mount. The dragon acts according to instinct, contributing to the chaos in which Jace is killed. Rhaenyra finally gains the symbol that was supposed to complete her identity, only to discover that possessing a dragon does not make her its master. That directly reflects the season's larger argument. Daemon's response is even more important. When he discovers that Rhaenyra is Sheepstealer's rider, he understands what Rhaenyra may do if the truth becomes known. He kills an innocent shepherd, burns the body, and presents it as evidence that the unknown rider is dead. For once, Daemon's deception is not designed to move him closer to power. It is designed to protect his daughter. That does not make the murder noble. The scene remains horrifying because Daemon can only express love through the methods he understands: violence, fear, and lies. He protects Rhaenyra by sacrificing someone powerless. That is Daemon in one decision. His heart may have changed, but his tools have not. The later confrontation among Daemon, Rhaenyra, and their dragons should be the emotional climax of this storyline. Every character arrives believing they are in control. Then the dragons immediately prove otherwise. Daemon cannot order Caraxes to ignore Sheepstealer. Rhaenyra cannot command Sheepstealer to behave like a disciplined war dragon. Rhaenyra cannot separate the personal betrayal from the military threat. The spectacle works because the dragons are not just visual effects. They are physical representations of the emotions their riders cannot contain. But again, the structure weakens the impact. Daemon's movement between King's Landing, the Vale, Harrenhal, and Tumbleton gives him several powerful scenes without creating one smooth progression. At times, it feels as though the season is testing different versions of Daemon: military commander, political partner, guilty husband, violent prince, and protective father. All of those versions can coexist. The season simply needed a clearer line connecting them. By Tumbleton, Daemon finally understands what his demands for fire and blood look like from the ground. The man who repeatedly encouraged Rhaenyra to use overwhelming force is confronted by terrified civilians and children being used as shields. His hesitation is meaningful because it proves Harrenhal did change him, but it would be even stronger if the season had kept his relationship with Rhaenyra at the center of that transformation. Daemon does not become less dangerous. He finally begins to understand who pays the price for his danger. Shashit. Aemond and Alys Rivers. Aemond's Harrenhal storyline is atmospheric, disturbing, and frustrating in almost equal measure. Placing Aemond with Alys Rivers is a clever reversal. Aemond has built his entire identity around appearing untouchable. He has Vagar, skill with a sword, and the ability to terrify nearly anyone who challenges him. Alys is not impressed. She treats the prince who burned armies and terrorized kingdoms like a wounded child performing strength. She sees his guilt, his jealousy of Aegon, and the fear beneath his obsession with Daemon. For the first time, Aemond is trapped with someone he cannot dominate. The problem is repetition. He suffers visions, loses control, collapses, recovers, and then returns to the same emotional position. Alicent's arrival creates another confrontation with his need for maternal approval. But even that storyline circles around information the audience already understands. Aemond intentionally attacked Aegon. He resents being the second son. His cruelty is partly armor covering humiliation. These are important truths, but the season keeps rediscovering them, instead of allowing Aemond to make a decisive choice because of them. His submission to Aegon in the finale is powerful, but it arrives after so much psychological stalling that it feels like the real beginning of his next story rather than the conclusion of this one. Harrenhal strips away Aemond's illusion of control. It just takes too long to decide what should replace it. Ulf, Hugh, and the problem with sharing power. The Dragon Seeds are where Season 3's political themes become most interesting. Rhaenyra gives ordinary men access to the force that allowed House Targaryen to rule Westeros, but she never truly treats them as equals. Ulf and Hugh can ride dragons, but they are still expected to understand their place. They are given enough power to die for the queen, but not enough respect to feel that the new world she promises includes them. Ulf responds to this contradiction through insecurity and entitlement. He wants land, status, and recognition. Every time the court dismisses or humiliates him, his loyalty becomes easier to purchase. Ormund recognizes this immediately. He does not need Ulf to believe in the green cause. He only needs to offer him the dignity and rewards Rhaenyra withheld. Ulf's betrayal therefore makes sense. What makes the finale so effective is that he does not become a disciplined green soldier after changing sides. Once he mounts Silverwing, he attacks Rhaenyra's forces and then turns his dragonfire on Tumbleton itself. He does not prove that common people are unworthy of power. He proves that giving someone enormous power without responsibility, belonging, or accountability creates another tyrant. Hugh's betrayal is quieter. He does not join Ormond's army. He disobeys Rhaenyra and abandons his assigned role to search for Cat. He chooses his wife over the queen, only to find her dead after the battle has already consumed the town. Ulf betrays Rhaenyra because he wants more. Hugh disobeys her because the war has already taken too much. Treating these choices as different forms of betrayal.
Come on now, dawg. Come on, man.
Is one of the smartest changes the show makes. It gives both men motives rooted in their established personalities, rather than turning them into identical opportunists. But their stories also expose the season's pacing problem. The dragon seeds are essential to Rhaenyra's military strength, the class conflict in King's Landing, and the destruction of Tumbleton. Yet they spend much of the season separated from the central political drama. When their choices finally change the war, the thematic importance is clear. The emotional preparation is less consistent. Wanted to create, Daeron may be the most promising new character in Season 3. He enters the story surrounded by expectations. To the Greens, he is another Targaryen dragon rider. To Gwaine, he is family. To Ormund Hightower, he is a symbol who can be shaped into a replacement king. Ormund understands political theater better than almost anyone this season. He spreads propaganda, manipulates Daemon with the false Daeron, occupies Tumbleton, and turns oath by offering him a future. He also understands that a frightened young prince can become extremely useful if that prince is taught to confuse violence with courage. Daeron does not naturally possess Aemond's cruelty or Aegon's hunger for recognition. He is disturbed by what Ormund asks him to become. His conversations with Gwaine reveal someone who still has a conscience but fears appearing weak. That makes his relationship with Ormund deeply unsettling. The title, Daeron the Daring, is given to him before he has truly earned it. Ormund is not recognizing the boy Daeron already is. He is manufacturing the man he wants Westeros to see. This is another excellent storyline about identity being swallowed by power. Unfortunately, it arrives late and competes for attention with nearly every established character. House of the Dragon Season 3 is not empty, boring, or without purpose. It is overloaded. Nearly every storyline contains something worth exploring. It reveals the prisons they were already living inside. It offers excellent scenes while asking the audience to supply some of the connective tissue. That is why Season 3 can feel brilliant in the moment and strangely scattered when viewed as a whole. Oath has shown what happens when dragon power escapes political control. The final season does not need more characters or more separate plots. It needs clarity. Because House of the Dragon already knows how to create unforgettable scenes. Now it needs to make them feel like one unforgettable story.